And without further ado, I want to introduce our candidate for mayor, Gonzalo Cuervo, who I really, really support in this district. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Particularly, I want to thank Senator Anna Quezada, Councilwoman Rachel Miller, Councilwoman Mary Kay Harris, Miguel in Georgia from Reclaim, and Michael from the Brown University Graduate Students Union. This is a very special announcement because we all know how critical the housing situation has become in Providence. Housing affordability is one of the biggest challenges facing our city right now. On the one hand, there's something that's remarkable is that more and more people want to move here and want to invest here. The problem is that demand for housing continues to exceed supply. And not only enough new homes are being built, but we also know that for years, private developers have failed to build enough housing for poor and working class people. It's not just that. As the New York Times recently reported, home builders across the country are pulling back on building any new housing now in response to rising interest rates and the costs of borrowing money. Beyond the cost to individuals and families, housing unaffordability and displacement negatively impacts every neighborhood and sector of our economy. And we see an example here, this home, number 23. This home is owned and controlled by the Providence Redevelopment Agency, an agency that was created 70 years ago to end blight in the city of Providence. This home is a perfect example of the problems that we have with developing housing today. This home will be assigned by the Providence Redevelopment Agency to a developer or investor who will likely end up flipping the home to a second developer or investor who may restore the house and then sell it to a broker who will sell it to the end user, a family or an individual who wants to live in this neighborhood. In that multi-step process, everybody is adding value and extracting value from this property to the point that by the time it reaches the end user, this house could cost at least 2 to 2.5 times more than the value that it has right now. And all that additional value is going into the market. It's going into private investors, it's going into private developers' pockets. And it's being paid for by families or by individuals who choose to live in that house. This is unacceptable. And we all know that the cost of housing in Providence is out of control, and it's threatening to fundamentally change the character of this city we love. This is absolutely a crisis point. And we can't keep blaming the market as though it's a force that's entirely out of our control. I've said this many times on the campaign trail. The city of Providence today has all the tools necessary to change this reality and to take decisive action. And that's what I plan on doing. Over the course of the past several decades, Providence, like many other cities in the United States, has limited its role in expanding housing affordability. We've studied the problem. The city has made efforts to reform zoning and permitting regulations on a smaller scale. We've collaborated with community development corporations and other nonprofit groups to support their development projects. As a matter of fact, even 2 years ago, the city of Providence took the bold step of establishing an affordable housing trust. Yet we haven't really heard much about this fund beyond the recent announcement that $10 million of the $24 million in this trust were being assigned to the Superman building. Now, that brings us to today. Providence's housing shortage has created insecurity for many families and is literally pricing our workforce out of the city. According to Housing Works Rhode Island, 73% of Providence households cannot afford the median home price here. Meanwhile, the average 2-bedroom apartment is renting right around $1,800 a month, while the area median income hovers around $40,000 a year. This situation is unsustainable. If we are to realize Providence's full potential as a vibrant, diverse, and sustainable city, we must first offer secure and affordable housing options for working families, childcare providers, seniors, artists, service employees, and many more. For too long, the city has stood by and watched this crisis fester. We have the resources and tools to take action now. We can no longer wait for the state or the federal government or even the private market to take action for us. My plan takes bold steps to address our housing affordability crisis, and I'm proud to have worked with Reclaim Rhode Island, on several of these bold initiatives. The decisions we make and the actions we take now will determine who can afford to live in Providence going forward. As mayor, I'm going to take immediate steps to address our housing affordability crisis and ensure that everyone in Providence can find a safe and affordable place to call home. Now, I'm going to list some of the things. I'm not going to go through the whole plan. It's available on my website, gonzaloforprovidence.com/platform. But I will list some of the highlights. The first and big step that we're going to take is to establish a municipal public defender model to expand the city's affordable housing stock. We've seen this model in action in Montgomery County, Maryland, and they are making bold steps forward. They last year borrowed $50 million for their version of a housing trust, and they're already in the process of building a total of 8,000 affordable and low-income units for the community. Here in Providence, we can use ARPA and existing housing resources, including the Providence Redevelopment Agency, the Providence Housing Authority, the Planning Department, and the city's Affordable Housing Trust, as well as new state affordable housing dollars and community land trust models to develop and create sustainable, affordable, mixed income housing in neighborhoods across the city, not just on the south side, not just in low income areas, across the city. We can incentivize the construction of new multifamily properties to pressure rents downward citywide. The municipal public developer model will also work with nonprofit affordable housing developers to replace inefficient fossil fuel housing with environmentally sustainable units powered by renewable energy. This will help families and the environment while stimulating the local economy and creating consistency in construction jobs year-round, regardless of recession downturns. The state legislature has already taken a bold first step in this direction, thanks to the efforts of Reclaim and so many other partners that have been fighting this fight for years, by allocating ARPA funds to a pilot program for publicly developed rental housing modeled after the work that's being done in Montgomery County, Maryland. The second major step that we're going to do is institute rent stabilization. Now, there's been a lot of effort to push for rent stabilization. Some people call it rent control. There are a lot of different models used across the United States. They all have their ups and downs. I believe that here in Providence, we have the opportunity to work within what's allowable by state law and develop, in conjunction with community and legislative partners, a rent stabilization program that will curb the vast and unsustainable rent increases which have pushed so many of our families out of Providence. Year over year, rent increases in this model would be limited for units over 15 years and older to 4%, with exemptions made for newer rental properties. Rental units would have to be vacant for 5 years or more in order to opt out of that limit. And finally, to avoid loopholes that produce sales-based supply reductions, owner-occupied buildings would also be included in that cap. The third thing we're going to do is establish a mandatory eviction diversion program to reduce evictions. We know that non-payment of rent is the #1 reason that leads to evictions. And we can, using the existing legal framework that we have, develop a mediation program that will work with families and tenants to solve problems before the eviction process begins. I know that there are a lot of organizations, including DARE, which has been pushing for years to adopt a model that works with this. And I look forward to working with DARE and working with other experts and leaders in the area, and obviously working with the City Council to adopt a model that works and that is sustainable and that doesn't create an unwieldy bureaucracy. We want to create solutions that are practical and that work, not solutions that simply sound good on paper but are impossible to actually execute. And finally, we want to implement land use changes to allow Providence to grow without displacement. This means upzoning the city. This means ensuring that we are legalizing accessory dwelling units. You know, we hear a lot about accessory dwelling units, you know, the granny flats, the apartments over garages and that sort of thing. And we act as though this is a novel concept. these units have existed and are being occupied now, and they've been occupied. The problem is that they've been occupied illegally and in violation of our zoning and safety laws, and they're putting people at risk. We need to legalize these units and make sure that they are being offered in a way that guarantees the safety and security not only of the inhabitants of these units, but also of the neighborhood and the community, the surrounding community. We also want to push for increasing residential density citywide to 10 dwelling units per acre, modeled on similar provisions in urban areas in Massachusetts, particularly increasing density around transit hubs. Additionally, we want to replace off-street parking minimums with parking maximums and more stringent per occupant limits for non-residential parking to free land while confronting induced parking demand. And finally, these upzoning proposals will limit displacement and ensure affordability by including base zoning to explicitly mandate affordability in family units, similar to what's happening in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Ultimately, what we want to do is this. We don't want to create a new entity. We don't want to create more bureaucracy. What we need to do is gather the tools that are existently in the city's possession and gather the goodwill and the energy that we've seen from the state and from the legislature around the development of affordable housing and workforce housing, and really refocus our efforts. I believe that through a combination led by the Providence Redevelopment Agency and the Providence Housing Authority, we can make significant changes to improve our housing stock in the city of Providence and to make homeownership a reality for more families and affordable rent a reality for more renters. If we look at the model at Montgomery County, they have built a very successful model around their Housing Opportunities Commission, which is basically their equivalent of the Providence Housing Authority. And as I said earlier, they issued a $50 million bond last year. And they're already in the process of beginning work on more than 8,000 affordable and market rate units. And last year, we also issued an affordable housing bond for $24 million. And we haven't heard a lot from that. So my thing is, we're not trying to create anything entirely new. What we're trying to do is act with purpose and determination and bring people to the table that are experts in the area and utilize the tools that we already have to make affordable housing a reality and to end the housing affordability crisis that has been hurting Providence and hurting all of our families and friends for the past several years. Thank you.